Hi everyone, it's Rachel back with the Shades of Orange, and today I'm here to do another wrap up of the science fiction fantasy I've been reading recently. And for the most part, this is almost all new releases, so books that came out in 2023. I have some great books to talk about, some new favorites, some that are definitely early contenders for my best of the year list, which are very far away still. And all that being said, let's get started. First, let's talk about this trilogy here that was sent to me by Orbit Books. So the first book is Children of Time by Adrian Tchaikovsky, which is a backlist title that is a bit of a booktube darling. So I think just about everyone knows about this one, but essentially it follows different perspectives. And at the beginning, there are a group of scientists that go off to try to uplift and create new life on this planet. Something goes wrong and they end up uplifting something different than what they expected. I think everyone online knows what this book is about in terms of that other perspective, but I'm not going to say it because I've still seen that it's considered a bit of a spoiler, and I do always try to lead on the side of being spoiler free. So if you don't know, I will leave it there, but I think a lot of you know what I'm talking about. And given the subject matter of this book, I really enjoyed the one perspective of Portia. I thought it was really interesting. I learned a lot, and it wasn't as creepy as other people made it out to be. Instead, it was just more fascinating. So there's definitely a reason this is my science fiction video and not my horror video. But overall, I love the ideas of this one. I do consider Adrian Tchaikovsky to be a really smart writer. He has some really interesting ideas. I've also read his other books, Shards of Earth and its sequel, and I will say I slightly prefer that one more, and just simply because I think I really enjoy the narrative focus, or that specific plot is a little bit more interesting to me, but I like the ideas in here. One thing I found with this book, which is the same thing I've said about his other work, is that he tends to write really cool, big ideas. But in terms of his character work, I just find that you never really get a very intimate perspective with the characters. They are very much there to progress the plot, to explore different ideas that the author has, but I never personally found them to be very interesting. I never really got attached to them. And I don't think he's necessarily trying for that, but if that is something that's really important to you, that might be a challenge with this book. It is for me. It's the only thing ever holding it back from being a favorite is the fact that I really need a little bit more attachment to characters. It's something that's really grown on me in the last few years, is needing that character focus that you just don't find with this work. But overall, I really did enjoy this one. It's definitely a chunker. It took even me a while to get through, but I did really enjoy it. From there, I went down to book 2, which is Children of Ruin. Again, it focuses on a different creature, and I'll leave it spoiler free just in case you don't know what that is. I like this one. It had a lot of the elements that you see in book 1, and I've heard people say that book 2 isn't as good as book 1, and in my opinion, the only reason people would say that is the fact that when you read it for the first time in Children of Time, it's new, it's fresh, it's exciting, and this book follows a similar format, although people argue that does kind of go in some different narrative directions, but in a lot of ways it's fairly similar, so I just found it to be a little less fresh, a little less new, but still good. So I like this one. It's probably my least favorite of the 3, which brings me to the last book, and this is the one that's a new release, at least here in the North America, because I know the UK got it early, but this is Children of Memory, and this is the 3rd book. I originally said that it completed the trilogy. I'm not sure if that's the case anymore. I think there's room for more, but this one, in some ways, I think is my favorite, and it's because of, if you know again what creatures he introduces in the first 2 books, it was really exciting to try to figure out what was going to be the next focus, and I will say that I did not guess it. I know, I'm sure if you look online, you can easily spoil yourself for what is going on within this last book, or this book at least, and I think it was really fun to experience it for myself because it was just the very last thing I expected. And again, it felt a little bit more fresh because it kind of took a left turn. And compared to the first 2 books, I would say that this one is the most character focused, which again was what kind of was a struggle for me at the beginning. So I will say it's slightly different, not completely left field, don't get me wrong. I think if you like the first 2 books, you'll like this one as well. And yeah, in my opinion, I think it's my favorite of the 3. I do recommend it, but honestly, you do want to start back at the beginning because you'll miss important pieces of the story. These are considered to be companion stories, but really they all link together. So please read them in order and just do yourself that favor. Next up is Karma of the Sun, which is a science fiction book that I received for review from Camcat Books. And this one is really unique. It's set in the Himalayas in this future where there is a nuclear winter going on, and you find out that there's believed to be the end of the world coming soon. It is predicted that there is going to be one more explosion and then everything will be over. And this is set in basically a regressed society, so while it is science fiction, in a lot of ways it reads not necessarily like fantasy, but more like myth or mythos. And so if you enjoy that kind of story that feels a bit more philosophical in nature, I think that this one will appeal to you. We follow a young boy named Karma, whose father is an outcast, and he goes to seek him out at the end of the world to find him. And again, this is just like this beautiful epic journey of this boy looking for his father. It's perhaps not the kind of book I'm normally drawn to by the plot or narrative style, but again, I really like books that are different. So this one wasn't entirely to my taste. It was just a little bit too lyrical and whimsical almost for my nature. And I say whimsical, but it's a very dark setting to this book. But there's definitely an appeal to that. I definitely can see other people really loving this if that is more up their alley. And again, I just love something that's a little bit different, because if you look at the science fiction that's getting published today, there are a couple of really tropey things that are getting done over and over again. And so even if it's not entirely to my taste, I much prefer if a book goes in a different direction and does something new like this one does. Next up is Wild Massive by Scotto, and this is a book that I received for review from Tor.com. And this is a full-length novel. It's a piece of science fiction mixed almost with elements of fantasy that is really bizarre. It follows a woman who lives within this tower, this skyscraper that allows different multiverses to be connected. One day something lands on the roof and she has to go deal with it, and the story spirals from there. This one I picked up thinking that it was going to be really kooky science fiction, and I will be honest, I don't think I was fully prepared for how kooky it was. And while I just said how much I really enjoy science fiction that is different, this one was a little bit too much for me. I've said before on my channel that I don't really like funny science fiction, and not that this one is like laugh out loud funny, but when it's like over the top and bizarre and goofy, it's just not to my taste. I definitely have a preference for the dark and disturbing, which doesn't always have to be the case, but this one was just really not for me. And I'll be honest, it was so sickly, not even sweet, but like goofy and over the top and all the things that I normally steer clear of. So I think I should have done my homework more before requesting this one, just because I thought I was gonna like it. I really wanted to try this author, and I just don't think he's for me. If you love those kind of things, you might want to check this one out, but really not my taste. Next up is World Running Down by Hess. This is a book that I received for review from Angry Robot Books. And this is a science fiction story that's set in a post-apocalyptic future. We follow a young person named Valentine who is seeking to go to the utopia of Utah. And so along the way, they meet up with this artificial intelligence, and together they do this job where they are sent off to recover this merchandise, basically these artificial intelligence that have gone rogue. And within this adventure, they find out that perhaps these other AI have possibly gotten a bit more sentient than they should, and the story spirals from there. This is a trans story I really liked for a lot of reasons. I thought it was really smart and topical how the AI were really used as a mirror or another way to discuss trans issues and trans challenges through another light, really talking about personhood and just having autonomy over one's body and being able to decide who you are and telling the world rather than the world telling you. And again, you know, having an outside creator or someone who is, you know, telling you how it is. So super topical, super well done, and it was very nuanced. So again, if you're someone who appreciates social commentary but you don't want it to override the story, I think that this one was a good balance of having some really important things to say, but not coming across as too preachy. Again, instead I thought it was kind of subtle. You actually had to pay attention and be like, I see what the author's doing there. Okay, I see that nod there. And at the same time, it's just this great artificial intelligence ride, and I love stories that involve AI, and I do think that this one was just overall really well done. It's a pretty short book. I flew through it, and overall I thought it was really good for what it was doing, and I would recommend it if you're looking for a science fiction book, especially one with some trans rep. And for fantasy, I want to talk about The Unbroken by C.L. Clarke. This is a backlist title, but the new book is coming out soon, so I did want to get caught up. This is a book that came from Orbit Books, and in the story we follow a couple different perspectives, one being someone who was raised from a child to be a soldier, so they're taught to fight and kill, and then we also follow someone who is willing to be a turncoat. They commit commit treason, and their stories of course get pulled together. So this is a story of war and deals with a lot of really heavy themes, so lots of content warnings for very difficult material. I love that it brings a diverse, unique perspective. It is a fantasy book that is doing a lot of things that I tend to really like in fantasy. Again, I like it a little bit grittier. I like characters that are morally complex. There is no easy answers. There's no simplicity to the story. It has a lot of layers. I thought the writing was quite good. It did feel like a debut novel in some ways. This is a story that I think I'm going to love a little bit more once I get to book 2, just because this one for me was good for what it was doing, but I really think that I need to spend more time with the characters. I'll be honest, the one thing kind of holding me back is that while I found the characters to be interesting and complex, I never fully got attached to them. And so much of a story like this is the fact that you want to get really attached to the characters. You don't necessarily have to like them, but wanting to spend time with them. And so I think this series just needs more time, but overall a strong start. I really like this world and I want to see where it's going from here. And last, I want to talk about The Bone Ships by R.J. Barker. And this is a fantasy story that is set in a world where there are these warring nations. They fight on the water. Their ships are made of dragon bones. However, the dragons have disappeared, or so that is believed. But at the beginning of the story, they sight a dragon, and so the two sides go rushing off to fight and plunder the bones for more ships. This is just a really unique setup for a story. I haven't read as much seafaring fantasy as I would like to, so I definitely want to change that. If you have recommendations, let me know down below. I've become really obsessed with pirate stories, and I have to say that this one didn't really give me the piratey vibes that I was expecting. Instead, this is very much a story of military war on the waters, and so I think it will appeal more to people who perhaps like something like Master and Commander. Not that I've read that or watched it, but I think that that's a little bit more what I got from this one. The tone is much more serious. Again, when I think of like piratey books, I tend to think of them being just like really goofy and lighthearted and jokey. And this instead had a very serious tone. It was well developed in terms of the character work and the plot, and the world building was really rich and unique. And I also really loved the prose itself. I thought it was very beautiful. I will make a nod for the audiobook. This was actually gifted to me a while back, and thank you so much, Stephen, for sending it my way. I finally got to it, and I do agree with you that that is definitely the best way to experience this story. The narrator was fantastic and really brought the book to life. And again, I'm not someone who always appreciates really nice prose, but when it is read to me, I really find I have the time to appreciate it. In terms of negatives, I will admit that I didn't fully ever connect with the characters, which is a really important part of stories for me. And more so, I just found the plot to be very, very slow in how it was developed and told to the reader in more of a passive style that wasn't entirely to my taste. I'm still interested to perhaps see where the story goes from there. Again, it's very rich. I like what it was doing, but it definitely is less of a piratey adventure and more about, again, military life and expectations and war and glory and all of those good things. So if that sounds up your alley, I do recommend it. It's a little bit underhyped, so hopefully you'll go check it out if you haven't already. And for my Booktube shoutout this week, I want to recommend Monica from Mooney Reads. And I'm really excited to say that she is once again making science fiction videos. And I've probably shouted her out before, but it's been too long, and I definitely want to give her the extra boost of some new subscribers that are hopefully new to my channel, and then we'll go check out hers. So I love Monica for so many reasons. I really need to get better in touch with her. We used to chat a lot more online, but from a viewer perspective, I will recommend her channel because she solely focuses, for the most part, on science fiction. So most times when people say that they're science fiction booktubers, it means that they read like 10% science fiction and 90% fantasy, which still makes them considered a science fiction booktuber. In her case, she doesn't really love fantasy, which I think is funny. I do admit that I enjoy both genres at this point, but she is a diehard fan. She really goes straight for the science fiction, and I love her channel because she often explores science fiction that I haven't heard of, something that's more underhyped. And in some ways our tastes kind of intersect at times, and then they also diverge, which gives you a new source for recommendations for different kind of books. She really enjoys a lot of like soft science fiction, some very character focused books, literary science fiction, all of that. And again, if she's excited about a book, I have to go check it out. I love her energy, I love her personality, and I love her book recommendations, so it's win-win-win. Again, I'm going to have her channel linked down below in the description, so please go check her out. I love her, and I hope that you will too. So that's it for this video. video here. I'd love to know, of the books I talked about, which ones are you planning on checking out for yourself? And I would love to hear, is there a 2023 science fiction or fantasy release that you want me to read and review as soon as possible? I'm definitely trying once again to get my hands on as many new releases, and it's just kind of hard this time of the year. I find that publishers are still kind of getting them out. It's early. The library holds for the new releases are very, very long, but I definitely want to know if there's a book you're excited about, then I can get excited about it too, and hopefully come back with a review if it's worth everyone's time. If you're new to my channel, I do read a lot of science fiction, fantasy, horror, true crime, and thrillers, so if you want to stick around, subscribe, I appreciate that. If you want to give me a thumbs up on this video, I appreciate that too. If you want to drop a comment, it can just be a dragon or a spaceship, and if you want to help me out more, you can hit the little notification bell, that way you'll never miss a video from me. Thanks so much for watching. I'll talk to you again soon. Okay, bye-bye.